So good evening, everyone. I get the easy part tonight when you get to sit next to these extraordinary young leaders. But I first want to say to Nina and Sarah, thank you very much for the wonderful idea and the introduction. I get to do many cool things as CEO of Exelon, but I need to tell you one of my greatest honors is serving on the board of IIE as a trustee. You can't help but be moved by tonight and understanding the why. So to Alan, thank you. To Mark, thank you very much. So we could have this conversation all night, but we only have a few minutes. But I do want to just dive right in, and I just want to thank Roxy, Adnan, and Raini very much for joining us this evening and giving us your wisdom. So let's jump right in with you, Roxy. When you hear those statistics about women being well represented in higher education, but far less so in corporate leadership positions, does it match with you what you are seeing as a banking associate? So for those of you who don't know, Roxy's associate at Morgan Stanley.
Yes.
And what I love about it, when you get to know these people, the young generation are so diverse. Philosophy major, black belt in Taekwondo, and yeah, I just happen to work at Morgan Stanley. So that's the great part. So when you hear those, how has it shaped your professional experience if that is relevant to you right now?
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much consistent with what I've seen in 4 years in, I mean, I won't generalize, but in investment banking. I think firms are doing a lot to hire women into kind of their junior positions. So that kind of, it's representative from a demographic level. The associate and analyst level, the ratio between men to women is effectively 1-to-1. And I think that's pretty consistent across the street. However, as you kind of look to more senior levels, so kind of the director level and above, that doesn't really carry over. It's predominantly men. Mm-hmm. And I think one area that we are focused on, which is kind of retaining talent longer term, and particularly when it comes to retaining women as kind of talented individuals. Seeing someone who looks like you, but more importantly, who can understand your experience at a senior level is critically important. And I think one kind of obvious example of this is kind of if you're a woman, you've been at the firm for a couple of years, and you are kind of reaching your mid to late 20s or even early 30s, it becomes critically important to see a woman who is in a senior position who has kind of gone through important parts of their life that you're about to go through. So for example, having children and kind of having a family and being able to kind of balance the responsibilities there with a job that is incredibly demanding. Seeing examples of that in kind of senior leadership is critically important. I think that's an area where we're failing right now, and I think that's a reason why a lot of women tend to leave the financial services industry, or at least investment banking from what I've seen, kind of at the mid-level.
Thank you for that. So Raini, I'm gonna turn to you, and first off, as a graduated from law school this past Saturday, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Is that applause for me so that I no longer have to pay for this?
Absolutely.
So, all right, thank you. No, all right. No, in all seriousness. Raini, in terms of, that multi-dimensional next-gen leader, international moot court litigator, so you're all into this, you love international travel. How important is it to you to have connections with other women in the workplace and in your field? How do you believe it has additional value? Picking up what Roxy said, how important it is to see that. How have you seen that?
Well, the legal field is one of the oldest professions and oldest male-dominated professions. So being able to see women leadership and having women leadership, and while it might not even be in the higher levels, but having a woman associate when you're an intern, there to guide you, there to speak up for you, there to be there in the room when you can't, is vital. Just having someone there to tell you, hey, you might want to say this. Hey, this was Raini's idea. Hey, let's go to lunch. Let's talk about your future because I value your opinion and I value who you are as a person. It's unparalleled because as we were just discussing, more women are joining the workforce, but joining the workforce means nothing if there's no discussing of issues within the workplace that affect women. And in the law, it's known for being a hard environment. You work hard, you stay at the office, you put in the hours, but you shouldn't have to put the hours in a place where you're being abused or feel like you're not being heard. So having a women mentor, having women in the higher levels, having women work with you, building that community, as you just heard from Roxy, it's vital.
Well, thank you for that. And it leads right into how appropriate that I get to wrap this up with you and talk about this. Now, I sit back in sophomore at Yale.
Yes.
Fashionista, lived in England for a while, and you say, Calvin, I own my space.
According to you,
Yeah,
I appreciate
I
that.
understand. And avid tennis player, but you have really jumped into your supporting your ally position on what you think is important. So what I'd love to hear from you, Adnan, is why do you believe it is important for people who do not identify as a woman to be involved in the community, and what are you hoping to gain from your involvement?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's extremely important. Well, it's no secret, and we've heard it today, and we'll continue to hear that women are acutely aware of the inequality that they face, and oftentimes are very aware of the exact course of action that needs to be taken. But with a problem that's this sort of systemic, pervasive, entrenched, and slow to change, quite frankly, we heard the 140-year statistic, we all need to be on board. And for this community, what that means for men and people who don't identify as women is you need to be sort of an empathetic ally. And the reason I qualify allyship with empathy is it's one thing to be supportive theoretically in the abstract, to say, yes, women need to pursue leadership positions and stay there. I think by those metrics, most of the men in this room would be allies. But to be an empathetic ally is to say, I'm willing to give up my time to sit down, listen, learn, understand, empathize. And that's a core part of what we're hoping this community will be. And frankly, that's what I'm most excited about gaining in my involvement in the community. It's why we've been so thoughtful about how we introduce educational resources for people who don't identify as women and are allies in the community. And frankly, also, something that's very unique to IIE is what it means to be a global ally. I'd like to discover personally what it means to support women that I'm connected with through the community, online, digitally, who I may never meet in my life, and yet through my connection to them, I feel I have a responsibility to listen to and learn from. So, and that I would stress is very unique to IIE. 16,000 women a year, 200 programs, dozens of countries, and I'm frankly very excited to be involved.
Okay, so this is why you have hope for the future, right? Yes. And when you get to sit up here with these three dynamic next-gen leaders and talk about and listen to how they're thinking about the future and how they lean in, that is why it's hopeful. And I can't thank you guys enough for your leadership, not only thought leadership, but your leadership every day and how you show up to make a difference. What Adnan has just talked about is that we all have a role in this. Don't get caught up whether you're male or female or so forth. We all have a role to play no matter where we sit. What Raini identified is that the importance of sponsorship and mentorship, it's not just what you say when they're in the room with you, what you say when they're out of the room and how you represent them. And what Roxy has shared with us is that, hey, we know things are male-dominated when you sit in certain industries, but there's a voice for everyone, and we owe it to them to make sure that we represent them across all stages. So please join me in thanking them for their leadership and their input. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dad.
As I said, we could have had a much deeper and more robust conversation with each of these leaders, and I know we'll hear from them in the future. Thank you for guiding and giving your input to IIE for how we continue to build this program. It is now my pleasure to bring to the stage our chairman, a mentor of mine, and a friend. And when we're talking one-on-one, my brother from another mother, Mark Engelson. Please join me in welcoming Mark. Thank you, guys.